This is We Never Call the Cops.
The article is written by Patrick J. Carr, Laura Napolitano, and Jessica Keating.
The PowerPoint's by Dante Sharon, Gio Libby, and Leah Rando. The hypothesis that the research paper gave us was that, in a way, youth in impoverished areas of America have sort of adapted to a culture of high crime. This culture of high crime makes it hard for police to gain the trust of the youth who follow the so-called code of the street. It also makes the police and community relationships sort of fail, and it kind of provides to us a bleak view towards the future of impoverished neighborhoods. And that this causes high police aggression in these areas due to already the fact that they think they're going to get the police are going to get injured, like they think they're going to get hurt. There also is it's important to investigate young people's dispositions toward police, and that there is a need to understand the youth's views and attitudes of police, because there's very in-depth reviews on youth and police relationships. Our summary that we sort of gathered was that there are two main points. The first is to investigate legal cynicism, which is the fact that people think law enforcement are just unfit to help in certain high crime areas. And the second is to study and see if negative experiences with police cause rejection of police to form in youth. And they do this by looking at subcultural, which is where the youth reject the rule of law outright, and they look into an attenuated culture where they don't reject it outright, but they just don't agree with the police. They still follow the laws because they have good morals, is what it's sort of saying. So the study that we focused on, or were told to focus on, it took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is, if you don't know, in the United States. And they specifically looked at three major crime areas. They call them Plymouth, El Barrio, and Cedar Grove. Cedar Grove is the largest of those areas. It holds a much larger population than both of El Barrio and Plymouth combined. And then they wanted 164 participants. In the end, they only got 153 to volunteer, and then 7% of them refused to actively volunteer, so they only got 147 participants in the end. They wanted a equal amount of female and male, and then delinquents and non-delinquents. And the way they went about choosing these people, they went to these neighborhoods and recruited them. They did some through contact of community-based organizations. They did participant observation in neighborhoods, and some recruited using chain referral techniques. They wanted to gather a comparable group of people from each neighborhood. Initially, they wanted, like I said, the equal gender and the equal non-delinquent and delinquent. For those people who dropped out, it was specifically more males who dropped out. But people who participated in the self-report and interview were paid $25, promised confidentiality, and all their interviews were tape recorded.
All of the people who participated in this study were interviewed and recorded with permission. Within the interviews, people would give bias and sides and inclinations towards police, whether they felt more positively about them or more negatively. It was found in the study that there's a strong pull toward negativity toward police and law enforcement and justice. The negative inclination totaled out to about 61.8% of the people who were interviewed, and the positive inclination toward police was only at a low of 26.3%. The remainder, which is 11.8%, had a mixed inclination, mixed feelings towards justice and towards the justice system and their trust in the government. The population that was interviewed for this study was very diverse, but there was a poll in negativity and positivity with different races. White and Latino participants were found to be more likely to feel positively toward the police versus the other races that were incorporated. It was also found that the younger the person was, the more likely they were to feel negatively toward police and law enforcement.
While the youth were being interviewed, they spoke up on wanting to enforce gun laws. These were all consistent among race, age, gender, and by delinquent or non-delinquent. When the youth spoke on what positive solutions they wanted, they said that more activities in their community, more community involvement, more parental involvement, and more job opportunities would all be beneficial to crime-stopping solutions that the community could be involved with. A not-so-obvious solution that they spoke on was providing more police. Although they're negatively disposed to the police, they still see an important role in them for crime stopping. The youth view the formal social control or the disciplines of the social scene to be inconsistent. If the youth are negatively disposed to the police, it is because of their own personal experiences. This entails being stopped for no reason, being harassed, treated roughly, or that they notice dishonest and lazy police officers. The youth in this study do not live normal lives as seen by the crime rates in neighborhoods as well as the low class that they're in.
This study included diversity all throughout it. From Cedar Grove, we had mostly African Americans. From El Barrio, there's mostly Latinos. And from Plymouth, there's mostly whites. And also, on top of that, 51.7% were male. So it was pretty even across the playing field for all of that. The negative inclination toward policing was approximately 61.8%. This was asked why, and most of the answers were because of bad police experiences that they had experienced themselves, and observing the ineffectiveness of policing too. So they would see one example in the study was that someone had been pulled over for rolling a stop sign, but there was a shooting a block away. And that, to those people, just seems very ineffective because what are they doing to stop the real crime? The third reason was also just general poor views due to societal influences. So if someone's mom didn't like the police and they grew up hearing that, of course they're going to not like the police. Or if their group of friends didn't like the police, they were influenced by what was around them in the media and everything else. The positive inclination was at a low of 26.3%, which this mostly came from the white and Latino population from the study. There was mixed feelings at 11.8%. When teens were asked if they would call the police if they witnessed something illegal happening, less than 10% said they would. It was found that the younger the person is, the more likely they are to find a negative view toward police. However, this was interesting because when asked what would be most effective to fix the crime rate in their towns, people answered with more police. They wanted to fight crime with more protection, more policing, even though they had the negative inclination. Also, within this sample, approximately 30% of the people were already classified as criminal or delinquent.
If the youth have negative opinions about the police, it is because that they have had negative experiences with them. For opinions on the police, there were no huge differences in answers between age, race, or gender. It is important to know that not all of the youth growing up in high-crime areas have negative opinions on the police. They just want to believe in a system that isn't corrupt and to believe in a system where there's justice. The writers of We Never Call the Cops are hopeful that future studies will focus more on what youth construct in the law. It is important to know that the sample was non-random.
So, some of the improvements we were looking in on this study, one of them was that a lot of research was kind of repetitive, and that if they were to take out a few things here and there, it would probably help things out a little bit to make it less repetitive than it actually was. And then we also looked at the fact that maybe instead of just interviewing teenagers, maybe children as well, because if they're living in this subcultural society where they view like police are bad, that's how they're brought up, that's how they're taught. Like if they view that, maybe there'll be some insight from them as well. And then we also looked into the fact that maybe there should be more participants involved as well. I know it was kind of hard for them to get people, but maybe go to a bigger city like New York City or Los Angeles. You could probably get a lot more participants there. And then we thought maybe more of a random sample as well. Instead of just specifically choosing their people, maybe put out a survey or something, and then that'd be your random sample.